Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Friday, February 6th, 2026, and today we're talking water filtration for municipal water, self-sustaining farms, and it is Feedback Friday, so let's do it. All right, glorious Friday to you all. I hope everyone has fulfilled their weekly duties and is ready for the weekend. The Olympics officially kick off today, which is that's exciting. Always had a soft spot for that wide mix of random and common sports included in the Olympics. The kids are out of school again today, so nothing has changed there. We are looking at a small chance of snow today as well, but also highs in the 50s and 60s for Monday and Tuesday, respectively. So peace out, snow. Got the tomatoes started yesterday, but I may actually save that for next week to show you for an in the field segment. I mean, I fear it's kind of going to be boring, but the challenge when you've been doing something for like 16 years is that what you think is boring, that would be me, might be very helpful for other people. So if it's indeed boring, we'll blame it on that. Also, loved the video clips yesterday, and always, listeners and viewers, feel free to send your 20-second farm and or garden clips to Farmer Mike at no-tillgrowers.com. Very much love to see what you all have going on. Anyway, it is Friday, which means Feedback Friday, where we explore what you all were saying about this week's topics. On Monday, we talked radishes and weed control in the orchard. I always like when we do the crop breakdowns and folks add how they use that crop. At Startlingly True, wrote, quote, "I'm just a home gardener, but radishes are a crop I constantly succession plant. I eat them as a root crop raw in the spring and fall. I also use them in soups and roasted veggies mix throughout the year, but I also use the greens in salad mixes. Flowers are also great for salads, but my favorites are the seed pods, either raw or in stir fry, so incredibly versatile. And bonus, self-seeding once summer hits," end quote. And I agree on the versatility of those seed pods. I love those things. Great in a pickling scenario for sure, but super, super tasty. On the weed control front, at Stefan R. wrote, quote, "The orchard picture at 850 shows all the telltale signs of spraying with an herbicide under the trees. There is just no practical way anyone is keeping that large of an area free of weeds otherwise," end quote. So I don't think I have to say this, that I don't use herbicides on this farm, but for someone just clicking for the first time, that may not be evident, I guess, which is fine. That area, I actually was just experimenting with tarping the existing grass over the winter, which is why it looks all dead and mulchy like that, like a mulch. Some of you will recall that last summer I ran the cool season grasses over with a mower to sort of smash them all down when they got like 4 feet tall. And it just created like this really nice thick mulch layer there. Stuff will grow through it, and it did grow through it. But I like this idea of, using those cool season grasses and maybe some of those summer grasses as a little bit of a mulch for the orchard, just by like smashing them down and maybe occasionally throwing the tarps over there when I'm not using. But no, never used an herbicide, never will. On Tuesday, we talked about what to do if you can't trust your local mulch options. Also, we talked harvest bins and some takeaways from the Oak Conference. I think this is in regards to the mulch topic, but I liked what at Brad Liston wrote here either way. Quote, "I love the idea of making use of what is around. Working at a local high school, I've made friends with my shop teachers, and now I can fill up on free sawdust. On that note, I recently just asked the metal shop / welding teacher if I could commission him or a student to make a broad fork for me. I'm excited to have something handcrafted and local to work with in the same respect," end quote. Love that. Great stuff. There is always some waste materials and some general expertise around if you know where to look. Like in this case in a high school. Smart thinking. At Philiflom also asked that day, quote, "What about shredded cardboard mulch? Rip the cardboard into smaller pieces and drive over them with a lawnmower a couple times and then mulch with it? Question mark," end quote. Yeah, good question. I mean, assuming you are using just like straight brown cardboard, non-glossy, no colored inks or anything like that, all the, normal stuff, and you can shred it efficiently, it might work. The mower may have to be pretty high powered if you did it that way. My immediate sense is that the mulch would blow away easily, like in the wind, but perhaps you could maybe combine it with compost and make it work that way. I don't know. I'm sure there is an application there, even if just around bushes or perennials, better use than maybe just shipping it off to the landfill where a lot of that stuff ends up. On Wednesday, we went live and covered a whole range of topics. That was super fun. Richard Gould said that they missed the live, but asked how old are these garlic flowers that you see right here. In fact, they are from last June. They are the flour off of our elephant garlic, and they are my favorite flour. We used to sell them at market and tell people they'd be the last flour they ever had to buy. And it mostly worked, actually. We sold them for like $1 a stem, and it worked pretty well. I think we have some in the house right now that are probably like a couple or at least a few years old. So yeah, love alliums. At DJ Clarky Kent that day had a question about putting a garden near a septic tank that I answered live, and then commented later, quote, "Thank you for taking the time for my question. I had totally forgotten about the fact that I'd need to have space for work trucks to need access to my septic system. I'm amazed at how quickly you were able to identify possible concerns. And yes, I have gone back and watched a lot of the past videos regarding starting a farm, sometimes multiple times. Love your videos, and I hope to continue seeing your content for years to come," end quote. Thanks. And yeah, I'm glad you watched those videos. And with the septic thing, rarely do you need anyone to ever come do anything to your septic tank, ideally. But in the off chance that you do have some massive failure in June or something, you don't want to lose a bunch of production so that machinery can get back there. The only reason that came to mind, so quickly, I guess, is that we had an iffy septic tank on our last property, and I made sure it was always, relatively accessible without destroying the garden. I talked that day also about how it was my understanding that it is not a good idea to add sand to clay soils for drainage in general, and a few people agreed. At Alice Elizabeth W. wrote, quote, "Regarding improving drainage, Jesse is right on. According to Dick Raymond, gardening expert from the 70s and 80s, adding sand to clay makes something like peanut butter that is even harder to work with. You have to increase the soil organic matter to improve all soils. It improves drainage in clay and slows it in sand and makes them softer and nicer than before," end quote. Yeah, I mean, organic matter is magical like that. It is such an enigmatic, maybe substance, material. And this is my understanding too. When you add sand to clay, it's sort of like making like sloppy concrete. Now, I will also say that obviously sand is used in like turf situations for soccer fields and stuff, but that's definitely a different thing because they install massive and complicated drainage systems for those below ground to manage the moisture a lot of times. It's a very different thing than gardening. Lots of good comments that day, and the author I was trying to remember there at the beginning of that episode or that live was Rutger Bregman, and his book Moral Ambition is on its way to my house right now, so I'll be excited to dive into that. You all can dive in with me. We'll do like an impromptu book club. Then on Thursday, we talked about starting market gardens and finding customers, about balancing soil disturbance and cover crops, as well as we talked about exercise. On the farm marketing stuff, at Jenking2762 wrote, quote, "In my area, southeastern Pennsylvania, farm markets will supplement their own main crops with fruits and vegetables that they don't grow from other local growers. So these markets could do the selling. You could focus on growing and let someone else do the marketing," end quote. So totally, this is a thing. Things like co-ops as well, in certain areas, but at least with co-ops, they don't just accept any, grower usually. Often they were requiring you to have some decent amount of experience before joining the co-op. But that's not for every co-op, and that's not for every one of these sort of aggregates. They will all be different, but for sure, some sort of aggregate like that could be another option, another marketing option for you. We have sold to an aggregated low-income CSA for many years. There is a limit on how much, it brings in for us, but it does diversify our markets and can be a quick way to move 50 or 60 extra units of something and also get it to people who can't normally afford our food. So it's quite a bonus all the way around. On the exercise stuff, at 4-Day Homestead wrote, quote, "Winter inside exercise is awesome. 5 to 10 minutes many times a day can beat boredom, increase strength, and keep us fit for the next endeavor. FYI, cats can be taught soccer," end quote. Totally agree, except that there is no way I can get Charlie to play soccer with me. I guess maybe when she was a kitten, I probably could have, but now that she's an old lady, she mostly just hangs out and cusses at us. It's sweet. I saw someone mention that yoga was used by NFL receivers, and that is true. Yoga is in fact used by lots of athletes. Not to shout out my wife's favorite team here, but Liverpool forward Mo Salah famously employs yoga in his routines, among a whole lot of other things that he does, and is among the fittest players in the world, playing a full 90 minutes almost every game and doing it at a very high level. At John Rozier, 1986, wrote, quote, "It's important to stay on top of keeping yourself limber as you age. It's easy to let it go, which makes you more prone to injury," end quote. Indeed, I read a few years ago that your balance and health at age 40 has a direct sort of correlation to your health later in life, but also just balance in general is important when you get older, as a better balance will decrease your risk of falling, and falling can be incredibly dangerous when you get older. I also like in the yoga practice I'm following that she asks you to set an intention at the beginning, which I took to mean as a reason for doing this work itself, like going out of my way to stretch and exercise and all these things. And part of it for me is health and strength and injury prevention, but also part of it for me is that I want to be of the best health and mind when I get older, for my wife, for my kids, and potentially like grandkids. That's the sort of thing that drives me every day to stay healthy. I feel like when you find a clear target like that, the work is a lot easier to find the time for. Anyway, great stuff as always this week, and there are several comments on each thread that I won't have time to get to as usual. So always feel free to go back through and read. We have the best comment section on YouTube. All right, I said it. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll tell some chemicals in your irrigation water to scram. Go on. Out of here. BRB.
Hey nerds, this is Nick at Riggin Farm, North Georgia, Zone 7B. I'm going to show you what our garden looks like after all the snow thawed. The garlic is looking great. Our pea and oat cover crops, well, the peas died and oats haven't. The tunnel spinach is looking good. We're very happy with the tunnel lettuce.
Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Peaceful Heritage Nursery. If you're looking for hardy and resilient fruit trees, berry plants, or pawpaw trees, then check out Peaceful Heritage Nursery. Peaceful Heritage Nursery LLC is a mail-order nursery shipping premium quality fruit trees and berry plants across the USA. They specialize in resilient, non-GMO plant genetics for small growers. Their diverse selection includes berries, cold hardy figs, passion fruits, gumi, mulberry, and much more. They're famous for their diverse selection of premium quality grafted pawpaw trees. 5-star Google ratings and customer testimonials attest to their commitment to excellence in quality and service. Find them at peacefulheritage.com and join the mailing list. Once again, find them at peacefulheritage.com. Use the promo code NOTILL for 10% off your first order. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Lisa Harrison, who asks, quote, "Hey Jesse, I have a question regarding irrigation from a municipal water source. I just made an offer on a property located just northeast of Knoxville, Tennessee, 2 acres, mostly level and cleared, with a perfect sized house. This is a desired downsize for me, less house, more land. While the house is located outside the city limits, the property does have water provided by the municipal water supply. The house is on a septic system. I've had bad luck with the municipal water in Chattanooga, Tennessee on my backyard garden until I put in rainwater catchment system and started using rainwater for irrigation. However, I doubt I can catch and store enough rainwater to keep 1.5 to 3.25 acre market garden properly irrigated, and drilling a well is not an option. My question is regarding chemicals added to a municipal water supply. What sort of filters should be used to remove the chlorine/chloramine/fluoride and other chemicals added to the water supply before using the water for irrigation?" End quote. Okay, so this is a huge topic really, but also a simple one. In fact, the bulk of our own water comes from a municipal water source that we filter through a high volume filter called the Hydrologic Big Boy, with a sediment filter and a catalytic carbon filter for the chlorine, and also helps reduce the chloramine. Now, do not run out and buy this filter. I don't think it's a bad filter necessarily or anything like that. But I also don't have any particular affection for it. It seems to work okay, but I bought it many years ago, and I'm sure there are probably better ones on the market at this point, perhaps even less expensive options as well. I don't know. Now, I will say beyond the tunnels, we do not irrigate a ton on our farm. We're in a very wet region. We got almost 70 inches of rain this year. So mostly we use the rain, but then the water from our irrigation we use for wash water in the wash shed, greenhouse water for watering plants, high tunnel water, and for misting the lettuce in the field in the summer. My goal is to ultimately develop an alternative water option, but other things on the new farm have been a priority, and this filter continues to serve us just fine, even if it isn't totally ideal. So all that said, what you're really looking for is probably just a high volume water filter, and there really is only one way to shop for the right one for your situation. Determine roughly how much space you're going to be irrigating and with what, like do you need overhead irrigation, drip irrigation, etc., and then call an irrigation supply store and see what makes the most sense in your context. Now, also mentioned here is fluoride, and this is a chemical that can have some negative effects on monocots in particular, single leaf plants like onions, but it's unclear what filters beyond reverse osmosis filters would be helpful there, and perhaps that is also a question for your irrigation supplier. Now, I will say that there is a point at which you can filter water to absolute death. And although I think it's a good idea, microbially speaking, to reduce the chemicals in our irrigation water, it is not necessarily a good idea to get the water to just like pure H2O, because there is a lot of other nutrients in water that are beneficial. My take on this is to filter the water, of the bulk of the like chlorine and chloramine contamination, and then do the best you can to increase and preserve the groundwater through dry farming practices and techniques that we've talked about on the show a few times, or really just, what we talk about basically every day in some regard. Then, of course, if you have the money or opportunity to improve your water supply with a well or a rain catchment system or a pond, etc., then by all means, that's great. Like, definitely do as much of that as you can. In fact, I would prefer a diversity of water sources myself on this farm for the garden to get the widest range of nutrients, microbes, etc. involved. So anyway, those are my basic thoughts here. And I know it's not perhaps exciting to hear me just say, ask some other professional in terms of calling an expert. But one, that's what I would do. And two, this technology is always changing, so they will be far more up to date on that stuff than I can ever be. In the future, I plan on adding some new water sources to our own farm, so I can take you along on that journey as well. All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, the circular farm, and I don't mean round. Well, I guess it could be round. It doesn't have to be square or anything. It doesn't really matter what shape it's in. Anyway, be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Tend. Farming is hard, running it shouldn't be. Meet Tend, the purpose-built platform built by farmers for farmers. Plan your season, map your farm, and track every task from seed to sale. No more spreadsheets, no more guesswork, just smart, seamless workflows. Tend adapts to your farm, 1 acre or 100. Real-time inventory, sales, labor, tracking, traceability, and analytics all in one place. You grow food, flowers, fruit, and more. Tend helps you to grow smarter. Start free today at tend.com. That's TEND.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Certified Naturally Grown. Certified Naturally Grown is the grassroots certification built by farmers for farmers. C&G gives local growers like you recognition for the commitment of producing food without synthetic chemicals by assuring customers that your practices are verified. C&G's peer review inspection model keeps the cost of certification low while creating opportunities for knowledge sharing amongst a strong, supportive network of like-minded farmers. Apply today to be certified before the season ramps up. Applications processed within 7 days. Learn more at naturallygrown.org. All right, back to the show. All right, so I like to reserve Fridays for big ideas stuff. It's kind of my day to wind down and get all the more complicated, bigger picture stuff out of my brain headed into the weekend where, in theory, I'm supposed to rest, but usually just end up loading my brain with other more bigger picture stuff. Actually, this weekend, I have to work on taxes. So anyway, the thing I had on my mind today was closed loop systems or self-sustaining farms. This is something that I've thought about a lot over the years, but it was on my mind this week after I actually just like kind of randomly watched this video about Amsterdam. And I'm sorry, I know I crush on the Netherlands a lot on this show, but that country does some things really well and of course does other things not so well. But anyway, one of the things that Amsterdam seems to be doing well is working on closing the loop of their city, or creating a circular city, as the video states, where they are aiming to not bring in additional, what they call virgin materials by 2050 and recycle all their waste. So that would be composting and plastics, but also building materials, solar panels, all the things. There are a lot of interesting examples of this, from saving and sorting bricks to refabricating more efficient solar panels. But what I really liked was how they were collecting trash out of the canals, like just whatever garbage was floating around in there, categorizing it, and then designing policies around the categories to reduce the trash in the future, which to an American is like, they aren't just, like throwing it away in a recycling bin that will be hauled off to the dump anyway. Mind blown emoji. But how does this pertain to farms? Well, I think in some ways we view the idea of a self-sustaining farm as an absolute ideal, or as the absolute ideal, one that creates its own mulch, its own fertility, its own food, its own seed, breeds its own animals, all that stuff. That's all very cool, but the reality is that is a lot of work. Not super realistic or even frankly necessary. That level of self-sustainingness requires many, many hands to achieve, or at least to achieve well. Farms, you see, are not cities. What I mean is that a farm does not have the organizational or labor capacity to be self-sustaining on its own, but group a number of farms together and suddenly they have maybe even more capacity than a city to create a circular community, a composter who uses the waste of the other farms to supply the compost that then goes to grow food. grains that feed the chickens, and stalks from those grains that feed the gardens, the seed grower who specializes in growing and protecting the locally adapted seeds, and so on. And in a very loose sense, we do that as growers kind of automatically, often working with our friends and neighbors, but we don't always do it intentionally or harness that potential. And sure, I'm talking about farm collaborations like co-ops, but it doesn't necessarily have to be one giant farm with a bunch of branches. It can be a handful of farms that already exist vaguely near each other, finding ways to work together to close their own system gaps. Now, I've said it before, but there is no such thing as self-sufficiency. There is community sufficiency and insufficiency. But the thing I took away from that video about Amsterdam, I think, was the intentionality, was actively pursuing the purpose and not just trying to live in it, to assume it will happen or assume it happens naturally. It was that holistic element of not just identifying the problem, but working on ways, policies to prevent the waste in the future and close the gap. I'm not sure what that looks like necessarily for all of us, for you, for any one farm, but I think it's possible to create more circular farming communities with a little bit of effort, with looking at each waste or deficit, categorizing it, and then saying, how do we solve this here in this community? And maybe that takes an organization or an organization like Oak or some other, small farming organization in the area, helping to identify issues and address them, or maybe connecting the farmers and that sort of stuff. Or maybe it's farms in those areas recognizing the organizations that do that work and engaging more with them, being more intentional in that way. Or maybe it's them creating their own little organization that is like a little co-op that helps, 5 or 10 different farms in the area, finding ways to identify problems, brainstorm some solutions, and collectively solve them for one another. We always need compost. We shop around, for pricing and that sort of stuff. What we don't do is shop around with our farmer friends and say, if you have a lot, some access to nitrogen or carbon, I will come over there and turn it every week, or, offer some other trade or even buy it from you. Simple things like that. Anyway, not sure if that's entirely clear as an idea, but what say you all? Let me know. And otherwise, Fly Away Friday, you are free to go. Don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors, and if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. I didn't even drink my entire cup of tea. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of February, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Patrick Weaver, Alex and Oliver, Dwight Yoder, Bill King, Doug, and Ian at Grindstone Farms. Shouts to you all. Huge thank you for how much you all support us. It's incredible. All right, so in return, I offer you a story about Jones B. Flanagan. And Jones B. Flanagan, obviously working on his YouTube channel. And anyway, he decides to head back to the same hiking area and shoot another video in the exact same style, walking up the trail, filming it, walking back down, picking up the camera, rinse and repeat, and all with hopes that he can catch this particular, person on Jones's camera again. But this time he takes the GoPro off of his head and he sets it down facing like sort of downhill away from the camera. So if anyone is coming up, he has a better chance of catching it. And eureka, it in fact works. As he's reviewing the footage immediately after shooting it, and about halfway up the mountain, bingo, some old-timey looking man is there on the GoPro, but there isn't a man around. He kind of like walks through the woods. He, looks around. He doesn't see anybody. He doesn't see footsteps. He doesn't see any trace of a man. And so, Jones just decides to ask, like, is anyone out there? Hello? And out from behind a tree steps a full-blown, unmistakable ghost. Slightly see-through, all the things. And at first, Jones is a little stunned and scared, but the guy seems pretty harmless. It's, he's a man sort of holding his head down, low, and tells Jones somewhat sheepishly, and of course a little bit apologetically, that he doesn't really, being a ghost, have any way to start his own YouTube channel. He just sort of, photo bombs other people's YouTube channels and then hopes that somebody's watching it where he is and he can look over their shoulder and see himself. But really, he feels a little bit left out. And that's when the light bulb goes off for Jones and the Ghost Hiker channel is born. Yeah, I don't know, that was an uplifting story for the week, I think, or something. Thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend, everyone. Happy Olympics. Bye.